Hello, what's going on? It's Doug Cunnington here, and hopefully you could hear me okay. Let me know in the chat. I have a little bit different setup today. This is the whole podcasting studio. So I think I could hear myself on the laptop. So yeah, I switched up a couple things just to see how it would go. And yeah, this is where I record occasionally for the Mile High Fi podcast. Well, we always record in this setup for Mile High Fi. And normally I stand all the way up there, which is about, I would say like 5 or 6 feet away, not like really far away, but it's a couple steps to get over there. And it's just a little more relaxed here and you get to see the full thing. And I was frantic moving cables here just a moment ago. And I see I actually have my protein shake here. I just worked out. So my morning was a little bit different than I expected. So thanks everyone for hopping in here today. We will cover how to improve existing content. And basically, I probably don't need the headphones. Basically, what we're looking at today is a continuation of last week. And last week was pretty fun because we talked about finding content that you can improve. I'm always trying to find the perfect spot so that you could hear me well, but I don't end up making those sort of harsh sounds into the microphone. But nevertheless, it's a continuation from last week, which is kind of cool. So we'll be looking at that. If you missed it last week, you should check it out. I got several comments from people. People actually sent me an email and said that was one of the most helpful things that you have shown us. So you could check it out. I actually did a little demo over on Ahrefs showing how to pull some data to see what posts you might want to try to improve on your site specifically. You don't have to use Ahrefs. That's a paid tool. It just happened to be easy for me to use. I don't even think they have an affiliate program or anything like that. So Ahrefs just happens to be a nice way to pull that data. So if you didn't check it out, do check it out. Today we'll go over, I have a list here. There's probably a few ways. It looks like about 6 ways that I'll go over to improve existing content. I do want to give a quick shout out to our sponsors. So number 1, Niche Website Builders. And I'll talk a little bit more about them. They actually sponsor sort of the Q&A segment. So towards the end, I will answer questions. If you ask a question that is related to what I'm talking about at the time, we'll certainly get into it because that makes sense to do it. But if not, then I will save all the questions towards the end. Also, thanks to Ezoic. They sponsor these live streams and they have for a long time. So I really appreciate that. They have a tool called Leap, which is free to use if you are monetized using Ezoic, and basically it helps your site load faster, have a better user experience, and get green and core web vitals. So thanks to Ezoic. And then finally, Odys.global. That's the source for premium age domains. And I'll roll a quick little ad when I need to rest my voice. So yeah, I just worked out, and so always a little frantic. One meeting that I had earlier today went longer than I expected. And then I was like, oh, I do want to work out in the morning just to break up the day a little bit. I can work longer in the day if I take a break sort of earlier. It's counterintuitive. You may think, just power on through. But for me, it is good to take a break and get away from the computer. As you can see, I guess it's kind of bright down here, but it's because I have a ton of lights. There's no windows on this side of the basement, so it is nice to get outside when it is sunny, and it is very sunny today and quite warm considering how cool it was. So I'm going to say hello to some of the folks in the chat before we get into the meat of it. Lyrics, what's going on? And we have Gaz. How are you today? Oh, L Couch. It's your first time here. Welcome. And Zach is on. Zach can hear me. And then we have Daniel as well. So what's going on, Daniel? All right, cool. So we will get into it. One last thing that I'll mention is we have looking down. I'm looking down here a lot more, and I'm used to looking like directly. I have a kind of a nice setup, so it's easy for me to look at the camera and monitor myself pretty closely. So I got to remember I need to look over there so that I'm looking right into the camera. But I have this fine disco ball sitting right in front of me. I haven't mounted it yet, but my friend Carl gave it to me for the studio. He's my co-host in my other podcast called Mile High Fi about personal finance and financial independence. So if you haven't checked that out, please do. If you want to get notifications for these live streams, there's a link in the description. So if you just click over there, even if you're already on my email list, you can sign up in that form and it will tag you. And I know there's several people that are here that get these notifications. It's usually like 1 or 2 sentences, and I say, hey, I'm going live in 1 hour. So that's all it is. YouTube is famously inconsistent and not very good at sending notifications. Sometimes they don't come at all. Sometimes they show up late. So if you actually want to get a notification when I'm going live, sign up there. I think there's about 30 or 40 people, something like that. Not a huge number, but it makes me feel good that some people want to know when I am going live. And if you are watching this during the replay, I appreciate all the people that watch the replay. Most people watch the replay later. So thank you for watching, and it's great to have the people on here live. Daniel mentions that is a nice setup here. Joanne made it on, and yeah, we got a nice crew. So I will start. We're talking about how to improve content. So once you have identified what content you want to improve, there's a handful of things that you can do. One of my favorite ways, and there are even services around this, I know that Niche Website Builders has a service around adding FAQs, that's frequently asked questions. And it's very popular because basically it's easy to add these. You can do them in sort of a one-off fashion. So I know that's one of the challenges. People are very busy, and all you really need to do is have about 10 minutes or so, and you can add 1 or maybe 2 FAQs to a given post. It's very simple to do. All you have to do is head over to Google, search for the keyword that you're targeting for that post or something very similar. You can start with the exact keyword that you're targeting, and then you'll see the results. You can then look down for that feature box that says people also ask. And Google is telling you that people are asking about that specific question. Very simple. And the answer is right there. So they even make it easy for you to get the answer. And each time you click one of those questions, more questions pop up. Before too long, you'll end up with some weird, unrelated questions, but they're very easy to do. I would say at a minimum, add 3 questions. If you absolutely can't find additional questions, then maybe you just have to go with 1. But usually you could find a handful of questions, and depending on how broad the topic is or how many questions people ask, generally how much discussion there is and questions there are, you may find quite a few questions, like 10, and that would be okay to add. You can branch out if you want. You could like make some of those longer questions kind of a cluster of content versus putting it on a specific page. But if you're just trying to get a couple questions in there, that is perfectly fine. Very straightforward. One thing you can do, I've heard people put together scrapers of some kind where basically, and I'm sure there's tools that do this in a more sophisticated way, maybe that you already have access to, that you could just see the first 10 questions associated with a given search phrase. So very straightforward. You can hire someone, a very unskilled VA, to just list out the questions for you. Most of the time, I don't look and I don't hear about people trying to find the search volume for a given question. You could do that, but you may as well add it in if it's a relevant question and it seems like it is a normal question that people might ask. Quick side note, my wife and I recently went to see a comedy show, Nate Bargatze. Let me know in the chat if you know Nate Bargatze. We're big fans. He is a clean comic, so he doesn't cuss. The jokes aren't dirty in any fashion. It's just straight up like funny stories and anecdotes. And we just saw his new set. So I'm not going to give anything away. I'm not going to give away the punchlines, but he had a whole joke, a whole probably 3-4 minutes of SEO content. So stand-up comedy, it was funny. He'd never mentioned SEO. He just talked about Google. He was saying, and I'm not going to try to make it funny, by the way, but essentially he said, I'm going to try to figure this out. And Nate Bargatze, for the people that don't know him, he is very self-deprecating and talks about how dumb he is. He didn't go to college. He, barely squeaked by in school just in general. So he makes fun of himself all the time. So he was looking something up and then started trying to find the answer and then got distracted by the people also ask section. And then he started listing out some of the questions. And before too long, he was doing research about something that was completely unrelated to what he was initially trying to figure out. And it was some, almost clickbait style question where it's like, wow, is that even true? And then he kept going down. So it was a legit SEO joke a little bit, but he never mentioned SEO. And I was like, oh man, this is great. And it's all around. People also ask and frequently ask questions. Next, as far as improving content, you can spruce up the intro. And this is particularly helpful if you hired writers to write your intro, or hired an agency that maybe doesn't follow your directions, or maybe your directions weren't that great. But a lot of times what I see is a long intro that doesn't need to be there. Sometimes it defines or introduces topics which people should already be familiar with if they've searched for that term and they landed on your page. You just don't need to define it. So if someone is looking up like the best blender for protein shakes, you probably don't need to define blender or protein shake. They're literally using it in their query. So you don't need to define things which the searcher clearly already knows. So when you do that, people think the visitor, the searcher, lands on your site and thinks, this is too basic, I'm in the wrong place. Another thing that may happen is just redundant sentences that don't add any value. So they may say, having protein after you work out is really important. Studies show that protein is really good to have when you're trying to build muscle. And if you're trying to build muscle, you definitely want to have more protein. Basically, they're just repeating themselves over and over again, usually to hit a word count. And that is pointless and it wastes space. People want to get the answer more quickly. So if you rewrite the intro, particularly if it's fluffy, you could tighten it up and shorten it quite a bit. In fact, most of the time, people don't want the intro. Think about recipes that you may have looked up in the past, and then someone tells their life story about why they like grilled cheese sandwiches. You don't need to do that. You could just have a quick, 1 to 2 sentence intro and then get to the point. Another thing related to that kind of an idea, especially with the push to do the sort of informational websites in general, not just the informational posts, but websites where it's almost purely questions. It's really helpful to just answer the question quickly, 1 to 2 sentences, make it in the top 10% of the post. So if someone actually is trying to get an answer, they can get to it. They don't have to put it all the way at the bottom. In fact, I was chatting with someone who was looking at one of my sites, one of my friends, and basically they said, the answer to the question was all the way at the bottom. Why did you do that? And the truth is, I didn't look. I just had the content outsourced. I had a VA review it. I never even looked to see where the answers were. I probably didn't even look at all of the content that was published on the site. Just a little lazy. I didn't make it a priority to look. And yes, the best thing to do is get the answer up much higher. That's a better way to do it. Okay, so I see a lot more people are on here, which is great. I'm going to come back and say hi in a second. I'll answer questions towards the end. We're going to keep working through the few pieces that we have here to the advice I can give you for improving content. So next we have edit it to be tighter. So not just the intro. So I did mention check out the intro, tighten it up if you can, but the whole article. Look at it and see if sentences can be eliminated. There certainly was a time where we were trying to write longer and longer content, and the common wisdom was longer content is going to rank more. Like anything that kind of works, we do too much of it, and then we need to sort of contract a little bit. And in this case, I know I definitely have gone back where I essentially want to write content that is as short as possible. So quick example, I went back to improve some content on my site, Niche Site Project, and I think the original post was about 6,500 words or so, fairly lengthy. It was kind of a list type post, pretty good information. And I went through and I did actually most of the things that we're talking about here. I'll go through the checklist in a second, but when I went through, I thought, you know what? This section is longer than it needs to be. How can I shorten it? And maybe in the past, I would have thought, well, this is kind of important to provide a little bit more nuance. And that can be true, but it has to be the right intention for the searcher, and it has to make sense in the context of the whole post. When I thought about that, and I thought about, well, this is over a 6,000 word article, I could probably shorten a lot of things and just get the core facts out, and people will find that more helpful, and then they could dig deeper in other ways. So I removed, I want to say 1,500 to 2,000 words or so. And there was a lot that you have to take out when you're reducing it by that amount, whatever, 25% or so. That's a huge amount of content that you're removing. Now, I had kind of a low risk situation. The piece of content was still getting traffic, but it was much lower. Rankings had dropped. So I just wanted to see what would happen. And that helped a lot. I did other things, which I'll talk about at the end here. That particular post, it did get significantly more organic traffic. I haven't checked it in the last month, but within, I think the first 3 weeks, nothing really happened. And then maybe week 3 to week 7 or so, traffic was up by 30 to 35% on the organic side. Now, it wasn't a huge amount of traffic. So we're talking about, I can't even remember at this point, but we're talking about baseline of like 30 to 50 visitors a day, and then it moved higher. So we're not talking about huge numbers, but one can assume if you do that across several posts, especially if they're topically relevant, it could really have a great effect. I haven't worked on the other posts where I should do that, by the way. So you can make it tighter, get to the point a little more quickly. I already mentioned the one about moving the answer up higher, especially if you can get the answer into the intro for very straightforward questions. You could still have longer form content, by the way. You potentially would just want to provide the nuance after the answer. So if a person lands on it, they get the answer really quickly. I've mostly been talking about content that can really be informational, or it could be product reviews. The next couple are going to be completely related to product reviews. So number one, you can add more products. Typically, these are like the best of articles and you have multiple products listed. Usually, almost 100% of the time, you don't have every single product listed. I would say kind of the ideal number of products most of the time is somewhere between 3 to 5. You don't want to give people too many options. Now, that's not to say that you can't add more and have like 10 of them listed. I will caution, this is a little bit of the nuance. If you do have like 10 items, I think it could be a great resource, and you can have different types of solutions for different types of users, people that are on a budget, people that want the premium option, people that want something that's really durable, for example. So there's different classifications, and having more can be good. What you can do is put a table, but don't put all of the products on the table. So maybe you just put 3 to 5 products on the table, and then you have other products that are reviewed that don't make it on the table. That way you give people a table that's easy to use without overwhelming them with too many choices. That could be a bit of a problem. So you can add more products. So that is one option. You can also add more content to each of the mini reviews. So for example, you may mention 4 or 5 sentences for the 5 products that you have on your page that you're reviewing. What you can do is beef it up. So instead of having the 4 or 5 sentences for each product, add 3 or 4 more sentences. So you're not adding a huge amount to each one. You're just maybe covering another aspect of that particular feature. Like, we're talking about blenders before. Maybe there's some additional accessories that some blenders have, and you didn't talk about that in any of the mini reviews. And then you can go and talk about the accessories that certain blenders have, and then maybe other blenders don't have that accessory, and you can mention that as well. Maybe it doesn't always apply. Maybe there's certain products that have features that are not on every product, but still you could beef up the individual product reviews. One last thing that I'll mention that I did on my specific post, it doesn't always apply, but it fit really well for the post that I improved on Niche Site Project, and that is to add more images and get updated images. For the particular post that I had, the images were out of date. So if someone landed on that page and they looked at it, they would think, well, this is great, but this data seems to maybe be a little bit old. So I went through and got new screenshots for every single website that I was analyzing on that page. It took a few minutes, but it wasn't too bad. I had to take the screenshot, compress it, resize it, do a handful of things, name it properly, and then update it. It didn't take too long, but it took a few minutes to do that. So you could do the same thing. Sometimes the images are not going to be out of date, but maybe you can get more images that are related to maybe the specific products. If it's an informational post, maybe you could hop over and get the specific images that make sense for it. Sometimes it may not be exactly a product image or someone doing a how-to or executing like a how-to article, but you can get images that are closely related that can add to it. You might rank those on Google, maybe if you're lucky. On the other side, you actually can get a little bit more sort of web real estate to show ads. So if it's an informational post and you add more images, there's more spots that you can add, that you can place ads. So can be very helpful. So I'm going to quickly summarize what I did on the post that I improved on, and then I'll start answering some questions. Actually, I may roll the ad first to give my voice just a little bit of rest. I will say hello to some folks, and I see we have some good questions in here that are somewhat related. So here's what I did to improve the content on my site. I did tighten up the intro. I tightened up the whole article. So that's 2 things. Shortened it, cut out maybe 20% of the content that was maybe a little, not necessarily fluffy, but just went into far too much context. And I knew I could shorten it without taking away from what I was trying to communicate. Some people may be thinking, hey, if you remove content, could it hurt the article? Yeah, it can hurt the article, but you know what? You don't know unless you try. In worst case scenario, you can add it back and tweak things along the way. Typically, when I'm doing something like this, I take some bigger action, maybe take it a little bit too far. I don't like tweaking things in a very small way generally. I mean, that can be effective if you have arrived at that point. So now if I went back to that article, now that I've made drastic changes, all new images, new subheadings, I added or I removed a lot of content, I could probably go back and tweak a couple things and that would be all right. But the point is, if you're making drastic changes, you can see some drastic differences, some positive, some negative. So don't think everything on here is always going to help 100% of the time. Also, if you do make changes, there are so many other factors out there. So if you do this, and I think everyone has a story like this, you make changes or you do something, and then an algorithm update potentially, allegedly was released, you attribute whatever happened to the algorithm update. It may or may not be the source, but we have a confirmation bias and a very difficult road to actually test anything out like that. So you always got to look out for it. I added new images. I also updated the copy just across the board. So anything that had like timely information, I updated it. So for your post out there, whether it's informational or product related, you can see if there's anything that's out of date. Sometimes products are discontinued. In that case, sometimes I've actually left the product review in there and say, hey, this product is discontinued. You can't get it new, but it was a popular product. So you can't get it on Amazon, but some people, still want this product or they want information about it. So that is valid. I also, let's see. Yeah, so I think I covered most of it. There's several things that you can do. There's probably a few that I forgot. So if people have suggestions, please let me know in the chat. I'm going to roll the ad here from Odys, and then I'm going to come back and answer some questions and say hello to everyone. Let me find this video file. And we should be rolling in 3, 2. Odys Global, the source for aged premium domains. The featured domain for today is Embrace Japan. And this site used to showcase collectibles and toys and figurines related to Japanese anime. It was a bilingual site, so there was both Japanese and English. So I'm not sure if it was American English, but English in some capacity. And when you look through kind of the old screenshots here, you see a lot of it is in Japanese, but then you start seeing a little bit more English as time goes by. Cool thing is this domain was created back in 2008, so it's 14 years old. The domain rating has been as high as 40, but currently it's 25. And the domain authority is 31. And there are 135 do follow referring domains and 177 that are just general. Not all of those are do follow. And I think, you could probably just follow along and, depending on if you speak English and or Japanese, then you would be able to publish in both of those areas. And you could really kind of lean on just in general, the Japanese culture and branch out to other areas outside of anime. Although I would say if you're really into anime, this could be a fun little project to work on. Let's take a quick look at the referring domains. These 118 do follow referring domains. They're coming from places like CNET, ZDNet, prtimes.jp, a lot of JP, which is Japanese TLD. We have orange.com and so on. There's many, many more. Gamer.com. And I think you could kind of lean on the gaming community as well. If you do get this domain over from Odys, you can, they give you this logo, which is kind of a cool Japanese cartoon character, maybe like a samurai. It looks like there's a sword and the person's wearing a mask. So it looks pretty good to me. If you join Odys using my link, you can get $100 into your account, and I potentially would get a commission if you buy anything. So really appreciate it. And thanks to Odys Global. All right. We did it. So let's get to the questions here. So thanks to Odys and thanks to Ezoic. And I think there was a question where the answer is basically niche website builders. So we'll hop to that in a second. Susie's on. What's going on? And Zahir from Pakistan. And Couch said you watched my video on how I got started. Cool. Ya Dancer asked, what service does the FAQ stuff? So that is niche website builders. And you can actually, I believe for that type of service, you can save or get 10% more content using my coupon code. So that is in the show notes there. I am an affiliate. So if you sign up, I do get a commission, which I appreciate. That's why I do these live streams. And okay, Science Flare says, I'm a chemistry teacher having 10 years of experience. Can I tell you which content is best for a YouTube channel? I don't know. It depends on what you're trying to do. There's no like best content for a YouTube channel. It depends on if you're trying to teach people or sell stuff or build a following or whatever. So yeah, there's no right answer for that. By Belial says, how are you? Yeah, everybody's doing great. Guys says, did Wesley on your last show mention the free Chrome plugin SEO minion that gives you people also ask questions? I don't remember. He maybe did. Maybe someone else remembers. Funny thing, I talk all the time now. Talk all the time. I do many different shows all the time. And I don't remember a great deal of it, to be honest with you. He might have. I feel like someone did mention that plugin in the recent past. DJ says, good to be here. Thanks for doing these. You're welcome. Thanks for everyone for watching and stuff. If you want to give me a hand, you can hit the thumbs up. And if you're watching the replay, you can leave a comment. Even if you have like nothing more to add, you could just say thanks or appreciate doing these or whatever. Belial says, I hope you're doing well. Please explain Timeroid and RankBrain. I don't know what either of those are. Ned says, can you talk about merging similar articles into one post? Sure, yeah, great question. I used to do this more often when I noticed cannibalization happening on the site. And essentially what I like to do is combine the content together, remove anything that is redundant, and then make them sort of one cohesive piece. Sometimes it's just a matter of removing the intro and integrating a transition to make that happen. And then you would 301 redirect from the post which you're removing and point that towards the post that you are keeping and uniting the two pieces of content. And then you monitor and see what happens. You may need to tweak it a little bit more. You may need to have another look, just see how it reacts. I would give it, 1 to 2 months to let that sort of settle out. Belial is asking a question about AI writing and the tools. Should we utilize tools like Jasper, Phrase for long form content? And this is one of my most favorite questions. I love to get it every single week. And sometimes, if I'm lucky, 2 to 3 times in the same session. So I would say don't worry about AI writers. You're better off writing it on your own. Usually when people are trying to use AI writers or they're thinking about it, they're trying to take shortcuts. And I usually tell people to avoid shortcuts. And there's some discussion about it, but basically I fucking hate AI writers. I will be doing more content on it, but it's been sort of a struggle for me in that, again, a lot of times when people are asking about it, they're like kind of in a hurry, kind of want to take a shortcut, kind of want to do things a little cheaper, which usually ends up like not working out as well in the end. And then the other side of that is because I do these live streams and these tools are very popular. I get questions on them all the time and I don't know the answer. So it's no joke. I've definitely someone else is going to ask before we finish. I can almost guarantee that. But yeah, in general, if you stay away from them and then write things yourself or hire someone to write it, you're going to be better off in the long run. And actually, I'm waiting. Actually, let's do this. For the people that are interested in AI writers, what is the draw to use them? Write it in the chat. Please let me know. If you're watching the replay, please put it in the comments. I wasn't prepared enough today, but I have a pretty good idea for covering a couple topics related to AI writers. And I don't know if I want to go like sort of, I don't know exactly what I want to do with it, but I have a couple ideas. So I'm interested. What's the draw to use AI writers? Write it in the chat. Let me know. Guys says, I've started looking at some older articles using low fruits and you find some keywords you may have missed. Cool. Oh, and people are saying, yes, Wesley used SEO Minion. He mentioned that he would drill down into the people also ask questions. Very cool. All right. And then Masher just joined the stream. What's going on? And Eric is here. I talked to Eric earlier today. He has a very cool tool. Eric, if you want to throw the link in there, that is cool with me. We took a look at it. I personally don't have time to look at it for a bit, but I'm excited to check out Eric's really suite of tools. Okay. Zach says, you need to make an AI that auto responds to all the questions about AI writers. Okay. And we're getting through it. Masher says, I'm not a native speaker, so the AI writer seems like a good way of getting quality content without spending lots on writers. Cool. Med says most freelancers are using AI writers these days. I ran across that. Someone else mentioned it to me. So I think I'm, as much as I shit on the AI writers and then subsequently, not personally, the people in the chat, I'm like, please stop asking me about AI writers, but it's such a hot topic. And honestly, if I wanted to, right, put yourself in my shoes, I could create these videos where I like demo all the tools. I could demo all the tools. Here's a great idea if someone wants to start a channel. You could just review the AI tools and demo them, show people how to use them, be an affiliate, and you could probably make a lot of money each month. My guess is you could do really, really well. I'm guessing some of the affiliate programs are lifetime. So if someone stays a client, they will keep paying you each month. So I bet it would be very profitable. But the point is, I have been putting together or trying to set up some interviews where people have used the tools and used them successfully so that I can talk to people who are using them effectively. And one of those people said, whether you know it or not, if you're hiring writers, people are using the AI writers as tools, even though they're saying they're writing it themselves. In fact, I have a friend who hired a writer and things were going great like for the first week. And then he came back weeks later and looked at the content because like rankings were dropping. So basically he discovered that that person was using an AI writer and fired them. But he had like a month worth of content that was garbage. Joanne says you use AI to help with your intro and conclusions and pin description. Okay, so good usage. Zach says, if you could rank with content from AI writers, so can all of your competitors. Instead of joining the race to the bottom, put together better SOPs and systems to get the most out of a real winning team. Yeah, Zach, I mean, this is the kind of, I think we had a similar conclusion. Let's say it does work. Basically, anyone can do it, and all they have to do is write, hopefully, a little bit better content than you just got from the AI writer. So I have heard several people mention they use the AI writers as they use the AI writers as a starting point or just to help out, and then they'll go back and edit it. I think that's what Joanne is saying as well. And Susie says, I've been trying outranking to write outlines faster. Cool. A nomad overseas says, I think with Jasper, at least it can be good to build a skeleton of an article. You'll need to proofread and expand it yourself. It can often repeat a key phrase too often. Okay, good point. And Eric says it's possible to detect AI written content. I show people how to do it systematically. Google/MIT researchers have programs that detect it already, even though people say it can't be done. And Zach says, I don't care what tools the writers use as long as the content is good. And Gaz, who has used one of the tools pretty extensively, the AI content must be checked and proofread. You can uncheck it at your peril, but it always needs editing. Okay, cool. So, and the thing is, people are so interested in it that even though I fucking hate talking about it, 1/3 of these live streams are us talking about AI content. So I don't know what to do. I usually go with the flow, and then I try not to push things uphill. So maybe this will change. This is going to be like brought to you by, one of the many AI tools. I'll get in their back pocket, fucking say whatever they want. But when it comes down to it, I'm not trying to do things, cheaper or easier. I'm trying to do things usually better. And from that standpoint, using an AI tool really doesn't help me out. But occasionally I try to get views, not that often, but maybe I do need to put together some tutorials with these AI tools, show you what happens. Maybe I demo them and I'm blown away. And I think, wow, I had it all wrong. And now I'm smarter and I know that these tools are fantastic. But it's so popular. I mean, people want to use them. Certainly some good examples in here. People use them to help get started, intro, outro. Other people, they're not native English speakers like Masher, so it's super helpful to get started. And I suspect in that capacity, I mean, your ideal situation is maybe using an AI writer in a surgical way, not trying to get long form content, trying to get shorter form sections perhaps, and then run through a Grammarly type tool, or even better, hire an editor for the language that you are trying to rank. Hire an editor from that area, and then you can just pay them to go through it and clean it up. All right, cool. What other questions do we have out there? I know several people hopped on a little bit late, so if you missed it, I did go over about 6 or 7 different things that you can do to improve existing content. And Chris says, yeah, I could totally embrace the AI homebrews and AI reviews. And Guys says that Alex at WP Eagle has an experimental site that all the content is AI and it seems to be doing okay, but is heavily edited. Right. And Guys says, my current site would definitely not benefit from AI, as I know my subject better than any AI. Yeah, and I think it depends on what your goal is, just in general. But I certainly, while the AI writers can be a great tool, I don't think they're going to get most people where they want to go. They can help you get there if you use them in a certain way, perhaps. But I would suspect most of the time people are overusing them. And for example, Guys, you used to use one of these tools, but you stopped. Can you elaborate why? I think maybe you answered it in your latest comment there where you said that you know the subject matter better than an AI tool. So anyway, you can improve your content probably not using an AI tool. So I can comfortably say that. You potentially could, but you're probably better off just doing a couple things. It's fairly straightforward. Some of it you can't even do, but a lot of it, when it comes down to it, is editing. There's some addition that you can do, right? You can add the FAQs, which is a great way to get the long tail keywords that are question based. Sometimes you can get some featured snippet real estate, or maybe even be listed as an FAQ yourself. Belial says, we're waiting and expecting another magic like KGR from Doug. Yeah, I hear that occasionally, but, or like, is there an update for KGR? I have nothing. I have nothing new to add. Actually, I was talking to Eric earlier in the chat here, and part of the reason why KGR took off is because it's so simple and straightforward. There's only a couple factors you have to look up. It's not the only thing that you should use by any means, and I think since time has passed, people realize that I'm not very dogmatic about it. And it's just a tool in the toolbox. Really helpful for a brand new site, but it's certainly not the only thing that you should be doing. And I remember there was a time where people would, I would chat with them in a coaching call or something like that. And they would say, hey, I use other stuff, not just the keyword golden ratio. And I'm like, great. Me too. No one should only be using the keyword golden ratio. It's kind of limiting. At some point, you should be targeting higher competition keywords, most likely. So, and Zach has a great suggestion, the keyword platinum ratio. Pretty solid there. And a Nomad Overseas says an AI version of the KGR. That's good. Combine everything. I'm like, I had it wrong. I had all the AI stuff wrong. Should be doing more. All right. I need some help, everybody. I see, I'll ask for the help in a second. So Guys says, I used Jasper for my first site, which isn't as perfect, and you were learning the craft, and then you thought it would help get content quickly, but it was just to get the word count up. All right, so here's what I need help on. This is an old laptop right here. It's still kicking, but I think it's like from 2014, something like that, 2014, and I think it has like 16 gigs of RAM. Yeah, it has 16 gigs of RAM. So it does what I need it to do, but it is getting a little older, and I typically like to upgrade my laptop before anything major goes wrong. And knock on wood, I haven't had any issues with this laptop. I've taken it all across the country, traveled many different places with this, and it's been fantastic. Actually, I built my whole business on this laptop. I just got a new Mac Mini last summer, I think, which is sitting over there, where that's where I run some of my other stuff. Once I started doing 4K video, I needed something a little bit beefier, but this thing has been a workhorse. All that to say, I'm most likely in the next couple months going to upgrade. And who out there has a MacBook Air, one of the M1 processors? I'm most likely going to grab one of those. I'm usually the kind of person that gets a refurbished, but refurbished or used, like the Mac Mini that I got. Ordered it from eBay. Ended up, I searched around for a couple weeks. Once I noticed a good deal, I jumped on that one, and it was fine. So most likely I'm probably going to get it from eBay. So anyone have the M1? Any issues? I've heard a couple people complain about it, but I've also heard many people be very happy with it. And it's not going to be my workhorse. It'll just be what I travel with. So I won't be using it on a daily basis. It would probably be more like, weekly or monthly, and I probably wouldn't use it like extensively. So I'm pretty sure I'm going to go with another 16 gig unit, just because I'm a little afraid to go down to 8 gigs now that I'm used to this. So, all right, let's see what else we have in the chat here. Peak says keyword selection is important, but so is site structure and silos. Yeah. Guy says it requires many tries. So this is AI tools, requires many tries. Deletion and seed word training is expensive too. So you could outsource 4 articles a month for the same cost. Yeah. Oh yeah, for the promo videos, Nomad Overseas says I need a money gun. And oh yeah, and Lord, I always say your name wrong, man. I'm sorry. Devi, I think that's right. You know what? I did not name my laptop. And you know what? I have, you can't see them up, but I have several guitars, and I actually haven't named any of the guitars, and I probably should do that. Oh, and Nomad Overseas thinks the M2 MacBook Pros are coming out soon, and they're fairly pricey. So one thing I haven't shown it in a while. Some company sent me this like fake money. So there's like a stack of hundreds over there I can't get to, but it's like a movie picture, but it looks extremely real. It's not a close-up view right here, but it looks extremely real. And even the weight feels pretty good. So I'll just hold, I think I could switch cameras. And it says motion picture purposes only. But I mean, it looks pretty good overall. So anyway, I can use the stacks of money. And most likely, the other thing I do, so I probably won't go for the M2s, but that probably will make the M1s go down in value, or at least there potentially could be more in the market as people who are, cutting edge upgrade, or upgrade and then sell their old ones, maybe. And Guy says your old MacBook Pro has been switched over to a solid state drive for reliability. All right. And a Nomad Overseas says, try to hold off a couple months if you can. The updated MacBook Airs are coming out soon, and the M1 MacBook Airs can only connect to one external display. Okay. So for me, it wouldn't be my primary. So I would pretty much never hook it up to multiple external displays. One extra would be enough. Like, it would basically just be, if I'm going to a conference, I'd bring that laptop. Or if I'm going on vacation, I'd bring that laptop. It'd be just a little bit lighter than what I'm using right here. But that is good. If I can hold off for a couple months, I potentially can get it a little bit cheaper, as there will be more on the market generally. Zach says you don't have an M1, but Linus Tech Tips has done some good videos on it. Cool. Tiger Direct has a few M1s. Good. Dev I. Oh yeah, I got Dev I right. All right. Cool. All right. Okay, we have someone that asked about finding a niche, so I'll let people in the chat answer that one. And we have Dancer says, how do I feel about swapping out tables for a simple text comparison list and a buyer's guide, just for the sake of simplifying design and overall speed with less images? Yeah, I think that's fine. I personally enjoy less. I usually prefer a simpler design, just like you're talking about. So that's perfect. And the only downside potentially would be sometimes the featured snippets are based on like tables or other sort of rich formatting. So you may be okay. It may not make a difference. But from a simplicity standpoint, keeping things simple, that is a great way to do it. And Usama says the room has beautiful decor, and also asked about AI content. Can we use it for our website? And Usama, you're coming in at a weird time. I'm almost done here. I think Alex, potentially, I'm not sure if he's doing his live stream at this time, but he might be. But you're coming in at a weird time, and you're asking questions that are they're kind of funny for the people that have been on already, and especially the people that watch this most weeks. So the questions that you have asked are questions that I get all the time, and I've done videos on at least choosing a niche, so I encourage you to check that out. And then the AI content, we literally just talked about it. Nomad Overseas says, I don't know what camera you use, but we've had driver issues with Logitech webcams on the M1. Probably needs a driver update. I have heard that, and I'm using actually a Canon over there, and I'm using Ecamm Live. I think they did many updates immediately after the M1s rolled out. I know that there were some potential issues and such, and I do have a Logitech over there, but I typically don't use it unless something has gone wrong. So it's kind of a backup, and the camera that I have over there is it's something different. Evan says, you're about to sign up for Ezoic and you're going to ask if I have an affiliate link. I do. That's fantastic. I'd love it if you did sign up. There's one in the description down there, Evan. So I think it's probably labeled Just Start or Access Now. I can't remember what the vanity link is, but you'll see it down there. They're one of the fine sponsors. Yeah. Access Now. That will work. And let me know if you have any issues. Guys says you want to hurry up and bring out a dual folding screen like the Galaxy Z Fold. All right, Chris, see you later. And yeah, I think we've reached the end. So thanks everyone for hopping on. If you want to get notifications for when I do go live, I send them out about an hour early. So you don't have to rely on YouTube notifying you. There's a lot of bugs with that, or it doesn't happen. You can sign up for the list. It is listed below, and I just send you a quick notification. If you're already on the list, I'll just tag you so that I'll send you those specific emails. If you're not on the list, you will be joining the email list, but I send you all my free templates, make everything available, that sort of thing. So you can go check it out. Thanks again to our sponsors, Ezoic, who we just mentioned. We have the niche website builders. Someone was asking about their FAQ service. So they do literally one of the things that we talked about today. You can get my, You can get my coupon codes to save 10% on any link building. If you get anything related to content, you'll get 10% more content. So thanks everybody for hopping in. It seems like this timing is pretty good for most of the time. There's a handful more people, which is cool to just have a little bit more going on in the chat. So everybody have a good week, and we will catch you later.